I actually first started going to Kenya. I've been 13 times. Connected initially through Kim and Rick Peck.
The first time that Jim Beck spoke to me was on the upper crosswalk here.
Debbie and I bumped into Jim and Phyllis at 4th on Broadway. He and Phyllis were at a point where they were pondering what it would look like if they transitioned back to Kenya in a fuller fashion.
We had done some previous medical mission trips, and he approached us about, would we consider coming to Kenya?
Well, much of my exposure to missions prior to, even though the exposure had been good, was we're going to plant churches, we're going to be involved in evangelism, and while that is still very much a part of the work in Kenya, was a much more holistic approach, asking how can we minister to the medical needs of folks, and so a deep concern for physical healing.
The logistics, once we got there, I don't think we would have been able to do without Jim and Phyllis Beck. Their relationships with the people in their community. That was one of the first big impressions I had, was the relationships between the Christian community and the Islam community, and their cooperation to benefit the local people, especially around healthcare initially was what we were there for. But God took the people that went on that trip and participated and grew other ministries, like Terry Bennett with the education components, Angelique with the women's ministry.
After I went on the medical mission trips a couple of times, I asked the Becks if there was any way I could be involved with the schools, with children. It was really just interesting to see how the schools operated. They were on dirt floors. The classrooms were mud walls. The kids were piled into tiny desks.
And all of the kids are super attentive, whether they're 3 years old or 18, all the way through, whether they had a teacher or not. Like, they wanted to learn.
And so that's how it started. It progressed into working outside of that with having opportunities to go out in the field with Caris, something that they called compassion, doing compassion, and going out to the rural villages and really praying over the women that were marginalized, had been abused, or were in not great places of their lives, and just really having opportunities to speak to them, to pray over them, to love on them, and to just kind of share the hope that we have in Jesus with them.
It's kind of like the people that Jesus taught at first. There was a small group, but then they all went with their different gifts and used them for the purpose of spreading the gospel.
I know when I pray personally, a lot of my prayers are, God please, God please, God please, whereas almost every prayer that I've heard spoken out loud in Kenya is, God thank you, God thank you, God thank you.
Just seeing the joy that people had that had nothing. And then they shared everything they had.
Like, they're trying to feed you, they're trying to give you something to drink, and they don't have much to give.
The Kenyan people had such a hunger for the knowledge of why we were there and who sent us, and not who sent us by meaning Monterey, but who sent us but Jesus. And they were so hungry for that, and they just ate it up. And I know that in Jesus' lifetime, he spoke to that same crowd.
And I'll just be honest, I had a lot of what I call now Western arrogance. And it was just this mentality of like, I'm going to go and I'm going to impart my knowledge.
We go and we want to do things our way. And even in the schools, you can't teach the same way in Kenya that you taught here. And you have to watch how they're doing things there and how you can come alongside and help. And Jim and Phyllis didn't try to lead or tell them how to do it. They allowed them to work through that and find their own solutions that worked for Kenya.
To both of you, Jim and Phyllis, I think Monterey is a better church today in terms of how they think about worldwide missions as well as missions across the street than we were before you came into the picture.
There are very few times that you meet people and you think, wow, like, this person embodies Jesus. And even more than that is like a married couple being one flesh. of them going, and their only desire is to bring the kingdom of heaven to people around them.
They empowered the people that were there. They helped them find ways they could serve, and they helped me find those ways to serve as well.
If you have the opportunity to experience Kenya, you have the opportunity to experience your faith through another culture. And if you are able to experience your faith through another culture, God just gets bigger and bigger.